Hey, what's up, house groups? So my friend who's a preacher in a college town told this story about a kid who was attending his church for a while, who was taking Intro to Ornithology. It's a class about birds, and it was kind of hard. It had a legendarily hard final, and so he studied and studied and studied, and then he went in to take his final, and up on the screen were 20 pictures of birds' feet. And the entire final was identify each bird by looking at their feet. And this kid was like, that's ridiculous. I went to this whole class and I studied, and that's so stupid. And he was so mad, he told the professor, this is ridiculous. And the professor said, well, this is the final. And this kid decided, no, I'm not having it. And he said, no, I'm not gonna take this final. And he stood up to walk out, and the professor said, well, you're gonna fail if you don't take the final. And he said, that's fine, I'm not taking this final. And the professor said, remind me of your name again. And the kid pulled up his pant legs, pointed to his feet, and said, you tell me, professor, you tell me. And then he walked out. I don't know if that story is true or apocryphal, but it's a good reminder that we all hate tests that are unfair. We just loathe the idea that we're being tested unfairly. And on Sunday, we talked about a test that kind of felt unfair. In Genesis chapter 22, we read the story of God testing the faith of Abraham and Isaac by asking Abraham to sacrifice, like to lay out on an altar and stab to death and sacrifice his one and only son, the son that God had promised him, the son that God had promised would be the pathway to blessing the entire world. And it seems like a really weird test, and it seems unfair, but God is doing something in this test. He's shaping the faith of Abraham and Isaac. He's making them into who he needs them to be, into who he created them to be, by asking them to undergo this dramatic moment that allows him to prove his mega unconditional love and his abundant provision. See, the thing is, I think God needed them to know that they know that he'd provide, so that they could be who he created them to be and do what he created them to do in the world. And the same thing is true for us. When we trust that God is a God of abundant provision, we can live in a way that points our world towards him. But there's a problem that goes way back to the very beginning of time, like to Adam and Eve in the garden. We have this natural human tendency to doubt that God really loves us, and to doubt that he'll really provide, and to ask that question, well, what if God's holding out? What if he's not gonna provide? What if there's not gonna be enough? And so we get scared and we grasp for everything we can get our hands on, and we cling tightly to it because we're afraid, and our fear causes us to live with a scarcity mindset. That there is not enough, and there might not be enough. And if I release what I have, I might not have enough left over for me. And so we live with this fear, and we white knuckle everything we've got, and we don't live the lives that God made us for. And people have been doing that forever and ever, and people did it forever and ever. And then God himself decided, look, they're not getting it. They're not getting that I'm a God of abundance. And he stepped in. He gave us not only everything, he gave us his own self, and he gave his life, and Jesus died for us because of the ridiculous love and the generous provision of God. He made a way where there was no way. He made a way for us to be reconnected to God, and when Jesus died on the cross, it created this incredible, beautiful paradox for us, that we are both indebted and made free by a generous giver. Like, we owe God everything. We owe him for our life and our breath and everything we have. We owe him for our forgiveness and our salvation. But at the same time, his love and his generosity sets us free. It liberates us from the prison of living with this fear that there might not be enough. And it allows us to shift from this fear-based scarcity mindset to a faith-based abundance mindset. Knowing that we are loved and we are provided for by a loving creator who made an abundant world. And that allows us to live in a way where we can live beyond ourselves. We can make an impact beyond just us. We can live the lives we were meant for, and we can create a better future and write a better story for our world as we live with a radical generosity that looks like Jesus. The truth is, we cannot live like Jesus. We cannot look like Jesus without being radically generous, without having this generosity with our time and our praise and our gifting and our resources and everything we've got, without holding it with open hands out to everyone in need, that just flows out of the love of God that lives inside of us, because that's what the life of Jesus looks like. And that's what God says we were created to live like who we were created to be, and the kind of impact and meaning we were created to find in this world. And I think the truth is that those who give most freely live most freely. And so what I want to invite us to tonight is just to think about what it is that inspires that fear-based scarcity mindset in us, and what it's going to take for us to trust in the ridiculous unconditional love and the abundant provision of God, so that we can be set free from that prison of fear and live with a faith-based abundance mindset. Live with open hands in a way that blesses the people around us, in a way that looks like Jesus, in a way that points our world towards his love, because that's what we were made for.